Looks like we're good on the numbers. Does anybody want to make a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open the meeting.
Anybody second?
Aisha, yes.
Second.
Okay, so I'll go around. I'll start with Janet.
Yes.
Okay, Michael.
Yes.
I vote yes. Rachel.
Yes.
Yes. Aisha.
Yes.
Okay, and James.
Yes.
Okay, just so you know, we're doing everything by roll call. Just to confirm. All right, so the meeting is officially opened. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to our special guest, who we will introduce in just a couple minutes. First on our agenda, as we typically have, we do have the review of the minutes of the prior meeting with which Rachel sent to us this morning or this afternoon. And I would like to see if I guess I'll sort of go around. Does anybody have any proposed edits to the minutes that Rachel has sent to us this afternoon from our early January meeting?
I sent mine in earlier, so.
Yes, I think Michael just had a couple of typo. I had no edits at all. So if there's no proposed revisions to the minutes, does
Motion to
anybody
accept the minutes.
Okay, any seconds?
Second.
All right, and we'll vote, and we'll start off with Janet. We're voting on to accept the minutes, Janet.
Muted.
I think you're still muted, Janet. You can nod yes or no.
Oh yeah, I have my picture there today. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. And Michael?
Yes.
I vote yes, Rachel. Okay, and Aisha?
Yes.
And James?
Yes.
Okay, that is terrific. So without further ado, although I'm going to give a little bit of ado here. So I actually am very excited to have a guest who's with the Sharon Sustainability Coalition. I attended one of their meetings pre-COVID and maybe in 2018 or 2019 at the church in Sharon, and it was extremely informative. I think it was the first time I heard about a heat pump. And it was also just very inspirational about a really great grassroots effort to move forward on sustainability. And I am on the email list, so I pay attention to what's going on in Sharon. Again, very inspirational. A lot of activism in Sharon, which I think can be instructive. So I thought it would be helpful for us to hear directly from one of their activists, Paul Lowenstein. And I actually just want to spend 1 minute just introducing us and who we are. If everybody wants to go around and just introduce themselves, and I'll just give you like 1 minute of background of our committee, so you know where we're coming from, and then we'll sort of like go into a dialogue of what's going on in your town and what's going on with your coalition. So Janet, if you just want to introduce yourself, and I'll go around the circle.
I'm Janet Weinstein, and I'm been a resident since 1998, and I've been on the committee since they started.
Yes. Michael?
Michael Horan.
Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel Lazarus. I'm the secretary, so I'm taking notes, and I've lived here since 2016.
Aisha? Seems like you're on mute. Aisha, do you want to introduce yourself? Or?
Oh, yeah. Hi, my name is Aisha, and my last name is Oloyede Edward. It's pretty mouthful, so a lot of people just call me Edward, Miss Edward.
You know what, Aisha? Once you know how to pronounce that name, it's actually very beautiful. But it's a little bit of a learning curve to know how to pronounce it. And then James, if you could introduce yourself and your position with the town.
Yes, I'm James Conlon. I'm the Environmental Affairs Officer for the town of Stoughton in the Engineering Department. I've been an employee for 37 years to the town of Stoughton. 18 of those years I was health agent. The remainder, I'm the conservation agent, Environmental Affairs Officer.
Actually, and I am Molly Crawford. I'm chair of the Climate Action Plan Committee. I'm also on a different committee, the Energy and Sustainability Committee, which is a long-term committee that's been formed by the select board over 10 years ago. The Climate Action Plan Committee was formed It'll be 2 years in June of 2025. It's been,
Picking up a lot of
Rachel,
interference
we're picking up
from
your
somebody. Everybody can mute.
All right. So anyway, so we've been in existence for about 1.5 years. The goal was to develop a climate action plan within 2 years. However, our consultant MAPC just came on board in August. So we've really been, let's just say it's going to take longer than 2 years, and we're sort of aiming for December of 2025 or January of 2026. We're still at the ground level with MAPC trying to work with us on a climate action plan. So we're very curious about what's been accomplished in Sharon, what ideas you might have for us. Certainly promoting activism, not just on the town level as far as town officials, but also residents, because we certainly understand that that's a really huge part of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I'll let you take it away, and I'll let people just jump in with questions for Paul.
Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Well, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm hats off to all you in Stoughton who are doing your best to try to advance the transition to a clean energy economy on behalf of our children, one of whom I saw for a little brief time there. But those are the people we care about. They don't, it's up to us. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I had a printing business in Canton for 17 years called Blue Hill Press, which I sold in 2002. And having nothing to do at the age of 52, I decided to get involved I joined the town water committee, just sort of, I don't know, have something to do. And I was very interested in promoting water conservation, which we did. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a graph of Sharon's water use over about 15 years. And you can see we reduced the water use. Each one of these bars is 1 year. And we reduced our water use by approximately 30%.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot. And
Wow.
It turned out to be really important because in 2020, we discovered a PFAS contamination in our town's biggest well number 4, which provides 45% of our town water approximately, or historically it's been by far the biggest production well out of the 6 wells that we have. That one's the biggest one by far. And that was the only one that had a PFAS contamination of about 100 parts per trillion. And the limit is 20 parts per trillion. So it had 5 times the legal limit. And so they had to shut it off right away. And this was in May, right before the summertime lawn irrigation system. So they banned lawn irrigation for the summer. It took them about 3 months to get a temporary PFAS treatment facility installed that could filter out the PFAS and they could start using the well water again. But in the meantime, we couldn't use the well. And it was the peak use time. In summer, that's when the water use increases. So the fact that we had spent the previous more than a decade promoting water conservation without really fully understanding why, we didn't know we were going to get a PFAS contamination. We just figured whatever problems the water department ran into, water's vital. We can't have a town without water. So if they ran into any difficulties, if we were using less water, whatever the problem was, it'd be easier to solve if we were using less water. Well, it turned out that it kind of saved us. So in addition, it saves energy from pumping the wells. Water is heavy. We spend about $150,000 a year pumping our wells. And then in addition to that, the treatment chemicals like potassium hydroxide for neutralizing the acid water and fluoride for, dental stuff. And what's the other one? Oh, chlorine, of course, keeping the water safe. Those chemicals all cost money. They have to be trucked in. So the less we use, it's a direct reduction in cost. Mm. So we're saving money on energy. We're saving money on chemicals. And we're making it easier to deal with problems. And there's no reason why we can't will obviously improve. We can conserve water, and nobody's the worse for wear. We put in steeply ascending block water rates. So the more water you use, the higher the rate you pay, which gives everybody a monetary incentive to conserve. And so anyway, that's part of, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So you said that you reduced the water use from 2002 to 2024 by about 30%?
Yeah.
What's the cost of the water savings? Has that all, because you said there were savings, do you have any figures on that?
Well, as I said, we're spending around 150,000 for energy and another 100 and some thousand for chemicals. So if we're saving 30% of that, that would be like, call it 50,000 or something like that. That's the order of magnitude. It's not a huge number in the grand scheme of things. We're now building a permanent PFAS treatment plant, which costs $30 million. And the water department annual budget is about $4 million. So it's crazy. I mean, it's just nuts. I can't tell you. I know Stoughton is partly on wells and partly on MWRA. I tried to get Sharon to switch over to MWRA too, because MWRA water comes from reservoirs that are surrounded by 100,000 acres of uninhabited forest. So there's no source of PFAS anywhere near. So it's not going to get contaminated except what comes down in the rain. And there are traces of PFAS in the rain, believe it or not, but it's less than 1 part per trillion. So it's well within the EPA's guidelines. But anyway, I mentioned that because, we're talking about sustainability here, and the world is finite. Our water supply is finite, and, it's got to be an all of the above approach with all the people that are inhabiting the planet. We have to rethink the way we live, and water is part of it. But anyway, in 2019 at town meeting, we recruited 4 Sharon High School sophomores to go to town meeting and propose a warrant article that set a goal of 0 emissions by 2050. We were ahead of the state.
Rachel,
I'm sorry, muting again.
Yes, if you can mute while you type.
So sorry.
That's okay. All right. So you were telling us about a 2019 town meeting.
Yeah. And we got high school students to present the warrant article because they're the ones whose future is at stake here. So they did. And I think the adults would be embarrassed to vote against it. So, they kind of shamed the adults into voting for it. And so we have this, it's a non-binding goal. I mean, there's no consequences to not making the goal, but at least we have a goal, and it's part of our bylaws that we have a goal of 0 emissions by 2050. Not net zero by 2050, 0 emissions. There's a difference. We can't, go to some other town and say, okay, we'll buy some credits from you, but we're going to continue to emit ourselves. Okay. You can't get off that easy. So, but I mean, it's non-binding, so I don't think we're going to make it, but at least we have the goal there. And every time we propose something to move the ball towards the goal line of a sustainable future, we can refer back to the town meeting vote. And so it's useful in that sense. So there's that. And then Sustainable Sharon Coalition got started around 2015 or somewhere in there. I can't exactly remember. Maybe it was earlier than that, but we set up a website, and we offer the way it works is we have some vendors there, like solar installers and community solar, sources of community solar. And if you sign up for those things through the website, Sustainable Sharon gets for solar panels, I think it's $500. And for community solar, if somebody signs up for that, it might be $50. And I think we get maybe we get $25 for every time we get a energy assessment. So it's sort of word of mouth. We try to encourage our neighbors to do these things. And if we do, it helps fund the Sustainable Sharon Coalition.
Can I clarify for your purposes? So is your coalition a 501c3 nonprofit and not a town committee?
It's a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
Yes. So so there's that, and we promote things like, you know, solar panels and heat pumps. And we also promote like waste. There's a contingent of the Sustainable Sharing Coalition that's focused on waste. They've been trying to get the town to do you know what pay as you throw is?
Yes, we
Everybody
do.
know that? Yeah, that's been demonstrated to greatly reduce the volume of trash that the town generates. Sharon is pretty high compared to other towns in the state. The DEP has a color-coded map, and we're one of the high user towns. And we've been trying to get the select board to do pay as you throw, but it's politically what's the word? Controversial, because some people don't want to be bothered.
Yeah. I will say, so that was attempted about a year and a half ago, and I went to the meeting, which was packed with people. I think I was the only person who spoke in favor. People were like in an uproar, and it was just kind of amazing to me. Something that may have, you know, cost you a little bit more, or if you didn't completely comply, cost you a little bit more, maybe like an extra $150 a year. People were taking time out of their day as if this was some kind of bridge that was being crossed that was absolutely unacceptable. So in the end, the town did not implement that and just raised everybody's rates. So they ended up in the same, I don't know, more or less the same position.
Yeah.
We are certainly headed for a solid waste crisis.
Yeah.
Because there's no place to put the solid waste anymore. We're actually hoping to push the town in the short run to add at least recycling bins to various park and town, wherever you have a trash can. I'm optimistic that might actually happen. Curious, does Sharon have that, where Sharon has a town trash can? Is there a recycling can next to it?
There used to be, but they took it away. We used to have a place we could put cardboard. That's a big volume recyclable, and they took it away.
Do you know why they took it away?
I think that it was sort of a nuisance for the DPW, and the DPW I think when they built the new public safety building, which houses the fire department and the police department, they had to tear up the whole place. So they took it out and they said it would be temporary, but then they never put it back.
Okay.
The cardboard thing was in the way of the construction, so they took it away and then they never put it back.
I think I saw something like that outside the library the last time I went at Sharon, but it was very small, and it was like a place to put recyclables. But again, and also you're moving your library in a few months anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I got it straight, but anyway, we are putting a new, we have a number of textile recycling bins around town, and we're putting a new one in behind the Historical Society. It'll generate maybe, I'm going to say $500 to $700 worth of revenue per year at 4 cents a pound, depending on how much volume we can generate. We have to advertise it and make people familiar that it's there, because it's kind of tucked in the back there. It's not a high visibility location, but you know, nonprofits can make money by locating those things. I know the the VFW down on South Main Street, they have a clothing recycling thing that they're making about $700 a year. And I talked to the people at the Unitarian Church in Canton. They put one in last June, I want to say. It's been about 7 months, and they've already generated $1,300 worth of revenue at 4 cents a pound. So,
we have that kind of bin at all the schools, and they generate revenue for the schools.
Right.
Well.
We have them at the schools too. And in fact, that was one of the things that people pushed back. I'm on the Historical Society board, so I wanted to put one in to augment our revenues. You know, we're struggling. So some of the people said, no, you shouldn't do that because it'll take away from the schools. So I asked the people, the company that's doing it is St. Pauli Textile. And they said that roughly 80 to 85 textiles do not get recycled. They wind up in landfills. They wind up incinerated. And so by putting a recycling shed behind the Historical Society, we're not taking away from the schools. We're just expanding the pie. We're dipping into that 80 to 85% and reducing that. And so anyway, I just thought you might be interested in those figures.
Absolutely. So we're curious about, I guess maybe sort of two discussion points. One is, can you give us some update on what Sharon is doing as a town with respect to, making its buildings energy efficient, moving to any, electric vehicles or anything that the town or the town officials are making strides in?
Well, I know, for example, in the schools, they're putting solar panels now on the high school. We have a new high school. And one of my great regrets in life is that I didn't make a presentation to try to make the new high school net zero. I actually prepared the presentation, and then the superintendent of schools talked me out of it because she was afraid that by introducing an amendment to the motion to spend $163 million on a school, we might be jeopardizing the $50 million in state subsidies if it didn't pass. Because let's say, for example, the town meeting had voted an extra 10%, another $16 million to make it net zero. And then because it was even more expensive, then when the whole thing got put to a vote, it got voted down. That's what she was afraid of.
Right.
So she talked me out of doing it, but I regretted that decision ever since. Because here we are building a school that's going to last past 2050 that's on fracked gas, right? Which is as bad as, well, yeah, that's what the whole town is on gas. And gas is as bad as coal if you add back the fugitive emissions. So basically, we voted to get to zero by 2050, and then we built a $163 million high school that's going to prevent us from getting to zero by 2050. I mean, it's nuts. But we don't have the courage of our convictions. People want their cake and eat it too. They want to be at zero, but they don't want to change anything. So,
right. So, does your town have a climate action plan?
Not that I know of. I know that the Energy Advisory Committee has been talking about it. One of the things that I would like to see in an action plan like that is an annual inventory of all the cars. We have we charge excise tax on all the cars. And in order to do that, you have to know what kind of car each one is and how old it is and what kind it is. So in theory, at least, it should be possible to identify all the EVs in town and monitor how quickly that transition is occurring over from year to year. And, they say if you want to lose weight, you need to get on a scale. You need to have some way of measuring, right?
Right.
And I don't know, there should be a way to measure Sharon's carbon footprint, but it's not easy. And, it takes a lot of wherewithal. And we're talking about volunteers here that don't have a lot of time to dedicate exclusively to that. But there are consulting companies that will prepare a climate action plan. I don't think Sharon has one.
Okay.
We should. Every town should have one, but I don't think we have one.
And as far as, does the town have EV stations? Does the town have EV town vehicles?
Yes, we have. Well, we have EV charging stations. We have one at Town Hall. There's one at Moose Hill. Those are two that I know about, and there might be more as well. I think they were going to put one in they put in a solar canopy at the East Elementary School, and they were going to put in two, but the neighbors howled about it, and they thought it would lower their property values. They made a lot of kind of outrageous claims like that, and they succeeded in getting one of the two solar canopies canceled, but they built the other one. And I think they may have put a charging station to take the solar energy. If you have a battery in a charging station, you can use it. I know everybody parks under it. It's the preferred parking area because, if it's raining out, you get in your car without getting wet. If it's sunny and hot, there's shade. So it's a desirable place to park.
Okay.
And,
that's interesting. All right. So you do have one elementary school with a parking lot with a solar canopy.
And they just finishing another one at the middle school too, a pretty big one. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's at least two, and let me think. They were going to put one down by the soccer fields where I live, but the neighbors didn't like the way it was going to look, so they shot it down. You get a lot of pushback on the cosmetics. It's just insane that has become such a priority. I mean, whatever. I mean, we don't need to go there particularly. It's just a reality that no matter, it's like with your trash, no matter what you propose, people hate change, and we need a lot of change to make it to zero. So anyway.
What about your new library? Do you know whether, again, that's designed without to be, less reliant on fossil fuels?
Oh, that's some kind of silver LEED certified or some sort of not sufficiently aggressive standard, but it's something. It's better than it would have been. But the high school, for example, that one, we got a gas furnace, but I did succeed in getting the building committee to vote to double the insulation. They made the walls thicker.
Okay.
Out of 163 million, I got them to spend about 300 and some thousand to make the walls thicker, which actually is really important because in the future, sometime between now and 2050, hopefully, we'll rip out the gas furnace and replace it with a geothermal heat pump. That's a big enough building that it would justify, geothermal. And that was why it was going to cost more at the time. But I'm hoping, and if the building uses electricity, it's easier to get it on sustainable source. I know they're going to put, the third party is going to put, what do they call it? A power purchase agreement, solar panels on the roof that are, the capital is provided by an independent company. And then the company sells the electricity to the high school at a discount. So they're going to do that, which is good. And the fact that it has all that insulation means that, it'll take less energy to heat and cool the building. So that's a good thing.
Right.
We have two committees in town. We have the Sharon Energy Advisory Committee, and they have been awesome. They have arranged for multiple solar installations, solar canopies, solar fields or farms, whatever you want to call them. We're going to be generating about $1 million worth of solar electricity, which reduces our taxes by $1 million a year, right? And that's what really gets people from both sides of the political divide on the same page, as if we can save money on the solar and clean energy. So there's also a municipal solar project oversight committee, and I think that committee was formed in response to the pushback that happened on those solar canopies at East Elementary. The selectmen set up another committee to kind of prevent that kind of a blow up in the future. I guess, the idea is that they have to go to the neighbors first before the project gets too far into it, so that you can kind of you can accommodate whatever you give them advance notice and then give them an opportunity to speak up and voice their objections. Of course, if they just don't want it because they don't like the way it looks, it's kind of hard to accommodate that. But nevertheless, there are two committees now.
Well, that seems like significant progress in a concentrated, very meaningful area for the town.
Yeah, we've done great. We have a landfill, a capped landfill on Mountain Street. It's a huge area. That's by far the biggest project, and they are putting. I went over there a day or two ago, and I took a picture of the construction there. It's in progress now. It's going to generate a lot of electricity. There's a lot of solar panels up. There's a big area, and they're going to have a battery there to store the electricity, and then release it at night and times when the sun isn't shining. So that combination of of solar panels and batteries, it addresses the variability of solar energy.
Oh, nice.
One thing we did years ago was we changed all the lights, the street lights and the school lights to LEDs. That saved a lot of electricity. Let's see. As a director of the Historical Society, I arranged to get heat pumps installed in November of 2023. So it's been just a little over a year. And then last June, we put up 36 solar panels on the roof. And now we're approximately net zero. We're zero emissions because we have the building is now all electric. The old furnaces that we pulled out were gas furnaces. They were on their last legs anyway. They'd been there for 23 years and they were starting to leak, what's it called? Not methane, but carbon monoxide. Yeah, we had carbon monoxide detectors. The detectors weren't going off, but there was definitely some compromise on the heat exchanger was cracked. The guy came out, he showed me what was wrong, and he said that the heat exchangers on that model of furnace were no longer available. So we were faced with a choice of either replacing the furnace with a conventional gas furnace or putting in heat pumps and getting rid of both the old furnaces and the old inefficient air conditioners. So we
Right.
took out two systems and put in one system. So we only have to maintain one system now that, yes.
Did you have to take that to town meeting and sell them on that?
No, this is the Sharon Historical Society is a 501c3.
Ah, okay.
So we're independent. We did it we did it for our own reasons because we eliminated $4,000 a year worth of utility bills.
Wow.
And we got, I think, the heat pumps cost us $36,000, but we got $20,000 back from Mass Save. The reason we got $20,000 instead of the normal $10,000 for a whole home is because we're commercials, or we're a business,
Yeah.
quote unquote, even though we're nonprofit, and they give more generous rebates for businesses for some reason. But we got $20,000, so that meant it only cost us $16,000 out of pocket. Net cost.
That's awesome.
And then the solar panels were $51,000, actually $50,684. I have the number burned in my brain. But I'm pretty sure we're going to get a check for $15,200 from, which is 30% of the cost, from the IRS. Every nonprofits also have to file tax returns, and the Inflation Reduction Act recognized that nonprofits don't have any taxes, so the tax credit does a nonprofit no good at all. So they changed the rules so that nonprofits that install solar panels can get a check in the mail in response. It's sort of like when you file your taxes, you get a check if you overpaid your taxes. Well, they're using the same mechanism, only so they'll send us a check for $15,200 as if we had overpaid our taxes.
That's awesome. And I did go to a webinar, and that's called the Direct Pay Program.
Right, direct pay is what they call
That was very informative, and I've sort of passed it along to the town. I don't know if the town has done anything with it, but I just want to open it up. I've asked a lot of questions to other people who might have questions about what we can learn from Sharon, about what ideas we can share. I will say again, going at least to, I think Sharon had a Earth Day event maybe 2 years ago. It was very well attended, to the point of jealousy. So, you clearly have some good activists there. And I also feel like you have some traction with the schools and the schools being interested in these issues. So, but I'd like to open it up to other people who might have questions for our guest.
We do have a recycling coordinator at the school.
Oh, that's a great question. So the schools are doing recycling?
Apparently. Yeah, I'm not really as much engaged in the waste management side, except I do have a compost pile in my backyard. But, and we also, there's an energy coordinator too that I think is paid partly by Norwood and partly by Sharon. And I don't know if there's another town involved, that Stoughton or Canton is involved, but it's a shared person, whose salary is shared by more than one town. And, he pushes things along too.
Okay. Yes, we also have an energy manager who's a consultant, and she works for perhaps 4, 5, or 6 towns. So she's been moving forward with the, weatherization of buildings, updating things, making things more energy efficient, and a lot of progress in the front. I am curious as to how do you sort of publicize things that, let me go ahead, James, go ahead and ask a question.
Oh, well, thank you, Molly. Thanks very much. Thank you for coming to our meeting, Paul. I greatly appreciate sharing your experiences with us. Paul, I was wondering, did the town of Sharon get involved with any charging stations at all, public charging stations? And if so, what was your best step forward in moving some interest along those lines?
Yeah, I haven't been that involved. The Energy Committee, I'm not on the Energy Committee per se. They're the ones that push that through. But there's a charging station at the town hall. I think that has symbolic value as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a charging station up at the Moose Hill Audubon that the Audubon put in. So those are two that I know about. And I will say this, that I don't know how many of you have heard about an Aptera solar EV. Has anyone ever heard of it on this call? Well, there's a company in San Diego called Aptera. It's Aptera. And they are on the verge of starting production of some solar EVs. These are 3-wheeled, 2-passenger vehicles with solar panels on the hood and the roof. If you Google Aptera, you'll see a very futuristic, sort of a Jetson car that has gull wings. It's a pretty cool looking car. It's very aerodynamic, like a porpoise is very hydrodynamic. Well, these are aerodynamic, and that reduces the wind resistance. And they're also the body's made of carbon fiber, which is light. So between lightweight and aerodynamic, they're very efficient. And they can go, the one that I signed up for is capable of doing 600 miles on a charge, and it had the solar panels will collect enough sunlight on solar energy on a sunny day to power it 40 miles. So let's say you're commuting 30 miles a day. Let's say it's 15 miles to work and 15 miles home, and you have a solar. I mean, most people, when they commute to work, there's only one person in the car anyway. This car will carry 2 people. But in any event, and then if it's only going 30 miles a day and you're gathering 40 miles a day of solar electricity, you'd hardly ever have to plug it in, which speaks to your question, James, about one of the things is if we could revolutionize the fleet of commuter cars in America, there would be less need for charging stations because the cars would be getting charged on the fly, just by being out in the sun.
Wow.
So it's just a thought. This is pretty far in the future, but I will say this, that I put $100 down to hold my place in line for an Aptera, and there are 46,000 people ahead of me in line.
Oh, wow.
So my plan is when mine becomes available, probably in 2026 or 2027, my intention is to fly out to San Diego and drive it back across the country and stop at campsites and just sleep in the back of the car. There's about 6 feet of space behind the 2 seats. It's enough space to put a surfboard back there. Of course, they're made in California, so but just show it to people and spread the word. So that's
a cool looking car.
And that you see it there, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to see it. But it's like a race car meets Eva from WALL-E.
Right, something like that. Yeah. Well, the one I ordered is supposedly going to cost $35,500, but my guess is that remember the calculator effect, where the cost of calculators came down from $100 to the point where they were giving them away as promotionals. I think that this car has the potential, when it goes into mass production, of really dropping the price quite a lot.
I'm looking at it too. Do you have any sense of how this works in the winter?
Not very well. Not as well as in the summer. Don't forget.
I'm looking at it. It doesn't look like something I'd want to take out in the snow.
Right. Well, it's made in San Diego, so they don't have snow there. Not normally, anyway. They got snow in New Orleans, but in any case, yeah. I'm going to find out the hard way how much problems I have in Massachusetts, but I'm determined to push the envelope.
Good for you.
And see this is a prototype, right? It's a forerunner of what's coming in the future. And no, it won't be perfect, and especially not for New England, but you can plug it in It's got front wheel drive, got two wheels pulling it, same as an ordinary car. So I imagine it'll pull through the snow just like any other car.
And I mean, people drive convertibles here, even though the climate is not good for it for like 6 months of the year.
Right.
So,
I mean, there will be days probably when I won't take it out, but for most of the year, the roads are clear. They're clear right now. For example, we had a nice sunny day and the roads are dry, so I could drive it on a day like today, no problem, and gather some sunshine. But it's, it remains to be seen what kind of difficulties I run into in Massachusetts with this thing. But certainly for 3/4 of the year, there won't be any snow issues or, batteries never work as well in the cold as they do when it's warm out. So, the range will be compromised in winter. But again, if it's 600 miles in summer, I'm going to guess it's going to be more than 400 miles in the winter. That's still quite a lot of range.
Yeah, I think people don't appreciate. I think they're overly anxious about the range. Whereas again, if it's something you commute back, even with current technology, something you commute back and forth with, if you can plug it in at night, it's not like we're all going on, wild trips of hundreds of miles every day. It's a very much the exception. It's usually the routine within the town or where your job is and back and forth. And most EVs, even older ones, cover that range pretty comfortably.
Right. Well, I'm going to drive this one across the country, so range is an issue. But
you're very brave. But that's awesome.
I think I can use my cell phone to find charging stations. Certainly, campgrounds have plugs, and if I have to take it, I'm going to take my time. I might take a month or two to drive across the country, and just take it nice and easy.
Write a blog.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I intend to do. And hopefully some people will follow, and I'll take pictures and interview people along the way, get their responses, and sort of make a journal entry every day and sort of show people what is possible if we decide we're going to create a sustainable future for our children and grandchildren. Somebody's got to.
You could also take it and show it off to people in Sharon as a demonstration.
Right. When I get it back to Sharon, certainly it's a very as you can see, it's a very eye-catching vehicle. And I know that people, I've read a lot online. There's a lot of YouTube videos about it where they interview people. And when people see it, they come right over and ask questions, So I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity for the first one in town to, talk it up.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. I mean, this is all a futuristic thing, but we only have until 2050. What is that? 25 years.
That's not long. James, you had another question?
Yes, I did. Now, Paul, it's come up recently at a climate equity meeting we held recently. I'm curious about solar canopies at schools in the town of Sharon. I know some communities are installing solar canopies over parking spaces and parking lots in certain school districts. Do you have any insight on the town of Sharon in their planning and development of these facilities on publicly owned property, and how that works in and fits in with factoring money in back to the school district with regard to these projects?
Well, so I don't have the particulars, but I know that solar panels almost always pay for themselves. And because the cost of electricity in Massachusetts is pretty high, 26, 30 cents, it depends on what program you're on, but it's pretty high. So when you're generating electricity for free, the solar energy just comes in. And so the basis for deciding to put in a solar panel is based on economics and based on lower cost of electricity. Every school uses a significant amount of electricity, has a significant electric bill. So by putting in a solar canopy next to a school and applying the cost, as I said, we're building solar all over Sharon, and we're going to be reducing our taxes by about $1 million a year. So the economics work, and that's what drives all this transition. the fact that solar and wind power have become marginally less expensive than gas. There's something called levelized cost of energy. If you Google that, you can find graphs that show the cost of energy from various sources over time, like for the last 10 or 20 years. And you'll see that solar power used to be the most expensive. Now it's the cheapest. Or maybe it's tied with wind for the cheapest, but it's slightly lower than gas. And gas is only going to go up because our gas reserves are finite and all costs are going up. But the cost of sunshine doesn't go up. It just stays. Once you invest, once you create, and I guess, the solar panels do deteriorate over time, but they're usually warranted for about 25 years, and they produce about 91% or 92% as much electricity at the end of 25 years as they do on day one. So you're only losing 8 or 9% of their potency over 25 years. And then they don't just stop working at the end of 20. That's when the warranty ends, but they keep on working beyond that. So the cost of electricity from solar panels is quite low. And that's why, schools that are forward looking and thinking about their utility bills, that's what we did at the Historical Society. We're getting about 10% return on investment from our solar panels that we're putting in. We had the money in a money market account and was making 5%. So by wiping out our utility bill, we're making 10%. So I'd rather have 10% than 5% any day of the week, especially with compounding. So, and not only that, that's today, right? And 5 years from now, the cost of gas will be higher than it is today, I predict. I think that's a fairly safe prediction. But the cost of the solar power we're getting from our solar panels won't change. So whereas it's 10% today, it might be 12 or 14 or 16% a few years down the road as the price of gas rises by eliminating, our utility bill.
That's great.
That's very exciting.
That's a great analysis, and that's really where you that's the kind of analysis you need to bring to, we need to bring to town officials and school officials about it paying an investment that pays for itself.
Well, I had to go to the board, the Historical Society board, of which I am a member, but there are 15 members. So I only have one vote, and I had to get the others to vote for it. They all voted for it in the end because I made a good presentation and I cost justified it. And I think they realized that the Historical Society also it's a community thing. We're supposed to be serving the community. The Historical Society is supported by memberships of people who live in the community and who appreciate having a repository for our antiques and old documents. And so they contribute every year. And we have events. We invite the community to come in and listen to our speakers and stuff like that. So we're very much a community service oriented organization. And part of that is living up to the non-binding resolution we passed at town meeting to get to zero by 2050. So we actually had two presentations, one after we installed the heat pumps and a second presentation after we installed the solar panels to show people what we had done. And we had several residents who have heat pumps and solar panels as a sort of a panel after the presentations. And the audience got to ask people who have actually done these things, who have installed heat pumps. I don't know if you can see, like right there.
Yep.
There's the heat pump. I put them in my own house and I put solar panels on my house. And my solar panels aren't enough to generate all the electricity we use because most of my house is shaded. I could only put them on the garage. So I get the rest of it from a community solar project. So all the electricity that I consume is coming from the sun in my house.
So, that's a great thing that you just mentioned about having some kind of, public engagement thing with a panel of people who have, taken this step or taken that step.
Right.
So I think that's something that we as a committee need to be talking about, something, because I think it's helpful to talk to somebody who's sort of gone through the process of whether it's the solar panels or the induction stove or whatever it may be, that people are it's unfamiliar to people or it seems a little frightening. or a little overwhelming to think of making the transition. But I love the economic argument. I think that's just so powerful.
Yeah, well, I want to also share with you all that my daughter, who she bought her first house 2 years ago in 2022 in the town of Pelham, Mass, which is over near Amherst, about an hour and 3/4 from here. And when she bought it, it was built in like 1972, I want to say. It's about 50 years old. So it was, at that time, electricity was cheap. And they built this house all electric, and they used resistance baseboard electric heaters to heat the house. And she was looking at like $5,000 or $7,000 a year in utility bills because she had and we were, as parents, we were like aghast at this prospect of our beloved daughter having to pay $7,000 a year. And so my wife and I rolled up our sleeves and we spent 6 months almost full time. We're both retired. And we'd drive out there almost every other week, and we'd take on, we did what we call an energy makeover on our house. And we did a whole lot of projects, including installing heat pumps, and we put in insulation. We actually put in, she has 28 windows in this house. It gets a lot of light in, which is part of its charm, but it also loses a lot of heat through the windows. So we figured out how to put up plexiglass inner windows to create a third. They're double windows, but they're 50 years old, so they were losing a lot of heat. So we put up a third layer of 1/4-inch plexiglass on the inside to reduce the rate at which heat would, escape the house via the windows in winter. And that, we cut our electric bill in half. And I made a PowerPoint presentation, and I converted it to PDF so people can see it. You can see the pictures, and then the description of what we did is right underneath each picture. So you got a picture and you got the words, and I'll circulate that to you, Molly.
Okay.
I'll send that to you, and you can distribute it to the others. And because I think there's a lot of useful information. We put in a heat pump dryer and a heat pump water heater, and we replaced her well. She has a private well. We replaced it with one that's much more efficient. We put in LED lights. We just did a lot of things that to reduce, it was a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it all added up to cutting your electric bill in half.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Rachel, did you have another question? Anybody else have another question?
I was just going to say, when you talked about reducing the utility cost of the schools, we're having an issue with getting a new elementary school. And one of the things that I've pointed out time and time again is that one of our oldest elementary schools, one of the ones we want to replace, is 1/5 of the size as the new high school that was just built, and yet its utility bills are 5 times higher. So there are immense savings for taxpayers if we use this kind of thing. And it's very difficult to get that through to people that they could be getting savings in the future. People seem very present focused. I did want to ask you, has there been anything that surprised you about people's reactions? Has there been anything very positive or very negative that you weren't expecting, so that can be a guide for us?
I haven't had any. The only significant pushback that I already mentioned is when they tried to put in 2 solar canopies by East Elementary. The people in the neighborhood, they objected, and we had a compromise and only put 1 up. And then there was another one down the street from me that the neighbors objected to on cosmetic reasons. They just didn't like the way it was going to look. It was going to go on a parking lot by the soccer fields on Gavin's Pond Road in Sharon. And I guess they just didn't like the way it looked. I don't know. So they backed away on that. But we are building solar ground mount solar panels just maybe a 1/4 mile from my house, right by one of the municipal wells. Every municipal well has to have a significant amount of land around it. It's called Zone 1, where you can't have any buildings or any human, anything, because they don't want the drinking water to be affected by human activities. And that means that there's open space around municipal wells. And a lot of places put in solar, a field full of solar panels right next to the well because there's no other use for the land. But the solar panels aren't going to hurt the water. So they can go in there. Just a thought.
Yeah.
We're doing one right down the street from my house that's right next to one of the town's more important drinking water wells, municipal wells.
And that zone 1 is a 500-foot radius.
Yeah, it's something like that. I thought it was 400, but you're right. I mean, that doesn't matter. 500, 400, same difference. That's a big area, several acres of land. I think it may be 12 acres or something. It's quite a bit of land. When you do the math of a circle of 500 feet radius, it's a lot of space. There's 40,000 square feet in an acre. But if you do pi r squared, it's the radius squared times 3.14. If you do the math, it's a lot of acres.
Wow. You
I think
just
you're cutting down a lot of trees, right?
Not in this case. This was a field that was
You're cut.
full of Japanese knotweed.
There you go. Now you're solving two problems at once.
Yeah, no, you're
That's a
right
beautiful
about the
thing.
trees. The preferred place to put solar panels is on roofs and parking lots that are not biologically active.
Right.
But, if we had taken that attitude about 40 years ago and started gradually building up our solar capacity, we wouldn't be faced with this nasty choice of having to either put up solar panels in virgin forest or uncut forest, which is sequestering carbon after all, but I have read that if you cut down an acre of forest and put in an acre of solar panels, that the amount of electricity that the solar panels generate prevents something like 8 times more carbon from going in the atmosphere compared to the amount of carbon that the forest sequesters. So it's actually from a strictly a carbon standpoint, it's a favorable exchange, but it's still not nearly as good as not cutting the trees down and putting the solar panels on roofs and parking lots, which is mostly what we've done. I mean, we did the landfill over there. That was a capped landfill. And we replaced a meadow, which sequesters some carbon, right? I mean, they're plants. I'm sure they're not stripping it down to the bare dirt. There's still going to be grass and weeds growing around there. They'll have to mow it from time to time to keep the weeds down. But, I'm sure they compromised the rate of carbon sequestration of that capped landfill by putting the solar panels there. But it's a good trade because you get a lot of power from a square foot of solar panels. I mean, we're going to get.
go ahead.
Well, I say in the case of the Historical Society, we are using about 15,000 kilowatt hours a year at the Historical Society, and the solar panels are going to produce about 13,000 kilowatt hours a year from just 36 solar panels. And the solar panels are getting much more potent. The ones we're putting on the Historical Society are 22% efficient versus the ones on my house, which I put up in 2012, more than 12 years ago. Those are only about 15%. In other words, 15% of the solar energy that falls on my solar panels gets converted to electricity, whereas at the Historical Society, 22% of every amount of solar gets converted into electricity. So they're 50% more efficient. And I just want to show you something here. I don't know if you can see this. It's an app that I have on my cell phone, and I'm showing you that today. Well, it's kind of backwards because it's a mirror image, but the orange one is how much electricity we use today, and the green one is how much solar we produced. So we used a little more than we produced, but it's January.
What's the name of that app?
It's made by Solar Edge, which is the manufacturer of the inverter that we installed at the Historical Society.
Okay, My Solar Edge.
Yeah.
SolarEdge.com, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, it's really it's an excellent, I got this app and I thought I was just going to find out how much solar power we produced every day. That was all I expected. But what I got was not only how much solar we're producing, but how much electricity the building is using. I got both sides of the equation, right? And by virtue of having a way of monitoring how much electricity the building is using, I've been fooling around with experimenting with the thermostat, and like the Historical Society is only occupied about 3 days a week. And it's nobody's in there for like 3 or 4 days a week. Sometimes we have events, but mostly there's a lot of time when it's unoccupied. So I program the timer on the thermostat to automatically turn the temperature down when nobody's in the building. And we greatly reduced the waste. Like we were using about 15,000 a year until we got the solar panels. This year, I think I can lower it to about maybe 13,000. I think I can save about 2,000 kilowatt hours a year by manipulating the thermostat without compromising anybody's comfort, because I just program it to turn it up for a few hours when people are in there. I have a schedule, and then I turn it back down again overnight and for the days when nobody's there.
Wow.
And it saves a lot of juice.
This has been awesome. I think just to get to the rest of our agenda before our
Sorry.
I want to thank you, and really, I really think you've given us a lot of thought, especially with respect to all the solar panels that are going on next door in Sharon, and hopefully we can, move forward with that and be inspired by what you've done, and maybe even talk to our own town energy consultant about what she thinks are our options to move forward in that way. I would love to stay in touch. Again, we have each other's email now, and I certainly have the Sharon Sustainability Coalition monthly emails. So we certainly will stay in touch. But it's really great to share information and to share the progress that Sharon's been making. And hopefully we're going to start making some serious progress too as we get our climate action plan and going forward. So you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I feel like I should probably
Sorry, I tend to be a big mouth. We'll talk too much.
You're not at all. Not at all. Like I say, this has been a privilege, actually, and so informative. So if folks are ready to move on, I actually was going to let Rachel, if she wants to tell us about the MAPC update, is really that we did have a climate training workshop. Rachel was there. Rachel took notes, and obviously we need to be efficient with our time, but I went well, but Rachel will tell you a little bit more detail on what happened.
Yeah, so the 1 second. Yes, so this happened on January 16th. There were about a dozen people who showed up. Everyone who showed up was very interested in participating. There was some very good discussion on ways of thinking about equity, thinking about who's not in the room, how can we get these people in the room? And then I think for me, the most effective part of the meeting was hearing people talk from the Planning Commission, James, people talking about different parts of the puzzle, and then starting to work together and realizing like, oh, right, well, there's this place, we really need more reflectivity in our asphalt. Oh, there's this place that doesn't make asphalt with these additives that would really help with the reflectivity. Can we get some kind of incentive in order to change that? People really wanted recommended state level zoning regulations that would help us build more efficiently and not have to have the problems of changing halfway for all new buildings. There was a point of there's one person who knew which trees are Rich Terry, who knew which trees are the most efficient at carbon sequester, as you were talking about, Paul, before, and just in general, like the training was very useful. But what really popped for me was seeing all these people across different committees talking, and I really think that one thing we should do as a climate action plan committee is invite like more lunches like this, and have people in the room talking about what do they need, what can we help get. Like the interchange was really fascinating, and it connected with a lot of different parts of town. This was not the entire town. This is mostly people who are either on committees or work for town government. But I think that alone was very productive, and we thought about different places of like getting grants, etc. So I think if we do these a little more often and maybe invite different parts of the community to having these roundtables and seeing what people want and what people are interested in doing and what people see as needed, I think that would be really productive for our climate action plan and also like for improving the town in general.
Yeah, I just want to second, and I was really pleased again with the turnout, with the positivity, and also there were 3 people from the planning board, which I think is a really important committee in town, and they all seem to be thinking already about sustainability. So I feel like, I feel like we can join forces with them. We can share information, and that again, to see people in person was actually really nice. I totally would echo Rachel. I'd love to have more roundtables with different committee members or town officials and or like that, just focusing on solutions. I mean, we had some really good people show up. So it was just, and I think MAPC represented us well. And I felt like we gained credibility. The town manager came out and spoke for a few minutes about the solid waste crisis, which is next on my agenda. But I felt like it was totally worthwhile and very happy that we had, a good group of people show up. So, any other questions about the climate equity training? So now MAPC is really turning the corner because they quite frankly spent a lot of time on this over 2 or 3 months, turning the corner on the next steps of community engagement with the direction of actually starting to develop the plan. So I'm excited about moving on to the next phase with MAPC. I think I've just jumped to the next section, which I don't have a whole lot of information about, but I'll tell you what the town manager said. So he came out during our Climate Action Equity Town Roundtable, and he spoke passionately about the solid waste crisis that we're all in and about how costs could jump tenfold in a few years. So what he says is we have a recycling rate of only about 9% in this town, which I'm quite surprised because I thought Paul Jaffoon said, a majority of people are recycling. So that was.
He said, to be fair, what he said was that about 85% of homes recycle, but that is a lot of people are recycling, maybe not very efficiently.
Correct.
Okay. In any event, so what he said is he's been talking with SMAC, which Paul Community Action Station, our public cable station, about having programs involving students that and teachers and curriculum. He wants to get it in the curriculum so that the students learn about recycling and get their whole families to recycle. So I did follow up with an email to him and said, please keep us in the loop. We would like to, help out, participate. And I said, if you're going to have that discussion about recycling, let's start talking about composting too, because people don't realize how easy it is and how effective it is. Janet, you had a question. We can't hear you, Janet.
When you're saying that people aren't recycling efficiently, did he say what people were doing wasn't efficient, or is there some way we can, if there is, there has to be a way to educate people. Because I recycle every 2 weeks and sometimes I have tons of recycling, so maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know, but
I will say, that is my attempt at squaring the numbers that the town manager and Paul Jaffoon gave us. So I don't know if that's actually correct, but that would be what I would think.
It just makes me sad because I think a lot of us put a lot of effort into it. But if we're doing something wrong, we'd like to know what it is, since it really takes a lot to gather all your stuff and do all that. But anyway, I don't know.
You're doing that much. It's probably more a question of you can have 100% of people recycling, but if they're only doing 10% of their total available recycling and throwing the rest in the trash, it's probably
okay.
That than actual inefficiency per se.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it that way. Yeah,
just fun and erring on the right side.
Okay, no, that I understand. Thank you.
So anyways, and so I had sent an email to Tom Coulter and also to April Lahane, who's a DPW person who seems to be in charge of solid waste recycling and reduction issues. So again, hopefully they'll keep us in the loop. I also copied the advisor to the high school recycling club. So hopefully if they're all linked together, we're going to make some progress. And I will say again, from discussions in the past with the town manager and getting the schools to recycle and or compost, he's basically like, they can do it. They just need to put a line item in their budget, you know? And so I don't know at what point in time we want to perhaps appear again before the school committee or reach out to the school committee chair. Maybe we could, you know, and try to get some traction there, because it's been a year plus since we initially met with them, but I don't think they're moving to recycling at the schools, which is really unfortunate. Anyway, so that was
on that note, I talked to Catherine Weiss, who is the school committee chair, and she said that you just have to email her to get on the agenda. So, and they're happy to hear from us whenever.
okay. That's good to hear. Anything else before we move on to the next issue? We're just going to be a very short report. So I will say the Martin Luther King Jr. event at the library was beautiful. It was beautifully done. And I literally mean beautiful. They had like decor in the community room by a professional interior designer. They had a really good panel of speakers and they had a really good turnout. And it's always good, instead of seeing the same usual suspects, you know, you see some new faces. So that was terrific. As always, like a dearth of the younger people. Would have been great to see a lot more people under 30 and stuff like that. That being said, as far as where our table was for the Climate Action Plan Committee / Energy and Sustainability Committee, we were put on a third floor upstairs with the police officers and the fire department, and absolutely nobody ever came up there. So that is done again. I'm just going to have to turn around and leave, because I did end up giving some flyers to the police department and talk with them, the police chief, and for 5 minutes. And also I talked with somebody from the Historical Society for a few minutes too, but there was no foot traffic whatsoever. And I looked down on the first floor and it was all that empty space. So I was really surprised by that. So again, it was a lovely event, and it was, I would say generally, especially for a snowstorm day, it was well attended, and kudos to the people who organized it. But it was not something that we could actually make contact with people, given that we were put out there in Siberia. So we have lots of flyers left over. Let's just put it that way. All right. So, does anybody have anything new that wasn't on the agenda? Any newly arising issues, information they want to share? All right.
There, just as a positive note, there is a new AI that, like, a lot of news came out today that uses extremely low amounts of energy, as opposed to the ones that have been pushed in America for the last few years. So there's going to have to be some competition coming up, and using less energy is going to be a big deal. I think the major ones lost $1 trillion in stock today because they were so impressed by DeepThink, which is coming out of China. And China has also been increasing their solar and renewables. They are, in total, they have more emissions than we do, but per capita, our emissions are higher. So that was cool news.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think sometimes it takes me back to feel like, you know, we need energy to heat our homes. We need energy for transportation. And then are like, but they're using all this energy for AI. It just seems unfortunate, but maybe they'll make progress in the right direction. We can only hope. All right. So I had nothing else on my agenda. It doesn't look like anybody's here for public comment. Asking once, asking twice. Doesn't seem like we have anybody here. We do have Smack here. Thank you, Smack, as always, for filming this. And I'm just going to pull out my calendar so I make sure, if we are going to look for 2 Mondays from today, that would be right on 27th. Excuse me, that looks like Monday, the 10th of February, which I think that works out because President's Day is the following week. So we will send out an invitation for that at any point in time. Anybody who has any ideas, of course, share it with me. But again, I believe we're turning the corner with MAPC. Hopefully they're going to start taking us to the next level. But we would like to continue to engage with sharing information with Sharon. Also, I know our counterparts in Canton are working on a climate action plan as well. We should maybe schedule somebody from Canton to come as well. So we can see what progress they've been, and they already have a consultant. They're doing it differently. They don't have MAPC. So it'd be interesting to touch base with them. Paul, question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing we did in Sharon that was quite significant that I didn't mention before, and that is community aggregation. We have something, if you Google Sharon Power Choice, you will see that we have this community aggregation, a committee in Sharon in conjunction with a consulting company finds sources of clean energy, and we have a higher proportion of clean energy than the baseline Eversource and National Grid electricity. And you have the option of paying a little bit more and getting 100% renewable energy. Everybody in town defaults to Sharon Power Choice, and it's an opt-out thing. So if you don't want to be on it, you can opt out, but the base rate is cheaper than Eversource, so nobody opts out. And even the base rate has more clean energy in it than Eversource. So I just wanted to make you aware that I don't know if you do that in Stoughton or not, but
yeah, and that's a great point to raise. Again, things are always popping up of something like, oh, we could really spend some time on that. So we do have it. We've had it for about a couple of years. Our town energy manager helped explain it to the public along with the consultant who's putting it in place. I have heard since that the people choosing that completely 100% renewable rate is pretty low. And that would be great if we could push that up. But I think that it, comes down to, I don't know, outreach and messaging, because if it costs you $15 more a year, why wouldn't you want to do it? Paul?
Yeah, I buy electricity from a company called Perch Community Solar, and they charge me 10% less than the Eversource rate. And that plus the electricity I get from my solar panels wipes out about 90% of my electric bill. But the last increment of 10%, I put it on 100% clean from Sharon Power Choice. So even though I'm paying a little more, it's only 10% of my total electricity. And so that way I can have a clear conscience. And I know that I'm, 100% of my electricity comes from clean sources, but I'm getting a big chunk of it from Perch at a 10% discount. So overall, I'm paying, the cheapest source I have is my own solar panels. Okay. But then the next cheapest source is the community solar. And the most expensive is the 100% from Sharon Power Choice, but that's only 10% or so of my energy. So it doesn't amount to very much. And it's not a hard choice for me to make to opt for 100% on just 10% of my energy use. So that's the way I mix and match to get a good price and, have my clear conscience that I'm not using any dirty electricity. Thank you.
No, thank you. And that's, again, another good point to talk about and do some more research as to how people who can't put solar panels up, or they have too much shady or whatever the issue is, that they could go to community solar instead. And that's something worth exploring and developing some information on to promulgate to the public so that they can see those choices. And I was actually at the Middlesex Sustainability Coalition had a huge webinar a couple months ago, and the guy spoke the same thing. He was like, it's not my solar panels, but he bought into a community solar, and you pretty much get the same result as far as you getting your energy from renewables. So that's the goal, and there's multiple ways to get there, and maybe it's simpler for some people to think about the community solar. So that's an excellent point. Paul.
Just want to quickly add that I'm getting 10% off my bill, but my daughter in Pelham is dealing with a company called Nexamp, and they're giving her 12.5% off the Eversource rate. So if you shop around, you may get a better deal than 10%. Thanks.
Okay. That's good to know. Good takeaway. All right. Anybody have anything else to add? And if not, if somebody wants to make a motion to close the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Anybody second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Janet. All right, so I will go around to take the vote. Janet?
Yes.
Okay, James? It sounds like yes. I vote yes. Michael?
Yeah.
Rachel?
Yes.
And Aisha?
Yes.
Okay, we will see everybody in a couple of weeks. Thank you. It's lovely to have a guest, so it's not just me.
Well, thank you for coming to visit us. Yeah.
Thank you, and good luck with all
Learned a lot.
Sharon. We'll be in touch. Take
Nice
care,
to meet
everybody.
you.
Well, thanks everyone. Bye.
Couple weeks.
All right, everybody.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.